to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
For the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk with you about a very exciting event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. This is the summer in which the city of Coeur d'Alene is celebrating its centennial, its 100th birthday. We've invited 3 guests today, and we'll have 3 guests again next week to talk about the history of Coeur d'Alene and what is going to go on. On our first program, I'm happy to welcome to the show Mr. Red Halpern, who is serving as the chairman of the Special Events Committee for the entire centennial. We also have with him Mr. Willie Hansen, who is representing the Coeur d'Alene JCs, and he will be talking about Memorial Weekend and what's happening, which is one of the special times, I understand, during the centennial. And our third guest is Gladys Walker, who is representing the Chamber of Commerce Commodores, and she also is going to be talking about the major parade that will take place during the centennial. As I've indicated at the beginning of the program, these individuals and 3 other individuals next week will be able to shed a lot of light on what's happening, and we want to invite all the people that view this program in Canada and throughout the Pacific Northwest to come down and to share this special time with us. And as always, I'm very happy to have on the program, on the panel, Steve Schenck, who is the Director of Informational Services at North Idaho College, and I shall invite Steve to commence the questioning.
Red Halpern, people who know you won't be a bit surprised to find you in the center of any kind of an activity, because it seems like activity's been your middle name ever since you came to Coeur d'Alene. But it might be interesting to explore just for a minute how we went from softball and the Olympics and other things to becoming the special events chairperson for the centennial.
Well, Steve, I was sitting at my desk in the Idaho State softball office one afternoon when I received a phone call from Mr. John McHugh. And John is the general chairman for the centennial. And of course, I worked under John when he was mayor a number of years ago. And John said, "Red, would you like to serve as special events chairman for the centennial?" And without thinking, which I should have done, I said yes, and thereby undertook what has almost become a full-time job.
Set the stage for us just a little bit, if you would, and maybe create some excitement, because I know that's what you're aiming for anyway. Give us an overview of what's going to be taking place during the centennial year.
Well, first of all, the centennial year will start probably somewhere around the latter part of April and the first part of May, and we hope to have events that's going to continue right up until Christmas of this year. And we hope to have them staggered out where we have a certain amount of events each month. But right now, the big deal that's coming up is the promotion of all the things that we're going to sell, the plates and the buttons and the ribbons and everything else that's going to be sold during the centennial, to make people aware, and we really appreciate this program, to make people aware, our Canadian friends as well as our neighbors in the Inland Empire, all the way to the coast, Seattle, and any place else in the United States, that this is going to be a fun place to come in 1987. It's our centennial. If they come here, they're going to have a lot of fun. There's a lot of good summer activities, and there's a lot of special events that will be promoted throughout the entire summer to keep people busy, happy, and we hope to give them some background on what Coeur d'Alene is.
Is it your intention to make this a self-supporting activity?
Yes. The Centennial Committee under Mr. McHugh has chairman for, well, we have a business chairman who's Mr. George Wilson, and we have a historian chairman, which is Mary Ann Dunnigan, and Ace Walden is helping her, and I believe Ace will be on our next program. And we have people that are delving into the many facets of the centennial. We've been working with the Coeur d'Alene Press. As you know, they've had a couple of special editions that have been out. And we're working with the radio stations. Many of the special events that we have are going to have live coverage during the course of the event itself. So I'd say the whole community, our committee has had probably 8 or 10 meetings already. Isn't that correct?
At least.
And during those meetings, we've had a response of maybe upwards of 30 to 40 people at each meeting that want to become involved. I could also say that almost all of the civic organizations in the community, the Rotary, the Lions, the Kiwanis, the JCs, which Willie represents, the Commodores, I'm sure I've left out other groups, but I know all the Legion, the American Legion, the VFW, the veterans organizations are all involved. Everybody is chipping in to make this a big year for Coeur d'Alene. There's one thing that we are sure of, at least I'm sure of, that I'm not going to be around for the next one, so we want to do our best with this one.
Red, I'd like to continue along that line, and I'm going to save the questions for our other two guests concerning Memorial Weekend, what's happening in the parade, but those are only some of the many, many events that are taking place. And I'm thinking of that viewer who's some distance away from Coeur d'Alene, and I hope is thinking at this time, well, tell me what you're going to do. What can I attend? What will be exciting? We have some time this week, and you'll be back with us again next week. Let's kind of break it between the two programs, but give our viewers some idea of some of the major type of things that they will be able to attend to enjoy our history and also to be entertained and to have a fun week or weekend in our city.
Well, we have so many events going on that I'm glad I brought my list with me. And I can give you an idea. Of course, one of the in May 9th and 10th, the North Idaho Mineral Club is having a centennial show at the fairgrounds. Now, they have a show each year, but this year it's going to be a centennial show. It's going to be bigger and better. There's the Centennial Spring Dash, which is April 26th. One of the biggest events, and this is something that people should probably travel as many miles as necessary to see it, is the Rotary-sponsored Up With People Centennial Show. And that's going to be right here at the college on May 12th and 13th. Now, I had the pleasure a number of years ago to attend this at the Falcon Stadium at Colorado Springs, and I saw the Up With People show, and if you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. I'm trying to promote tickets. The Rotary Club is selling tickets, but it is a fabulous show. It's something that everybody should see. During the Centennial Weekend, of course, I'm going to let our two cohorts here talk about that. In June, on June 27th, the Fabulous Shadows, and you know, the past 2 years they have packed the fairgrounds. They're going to have a sea cruise, and that's going to be a Centennial Sea Cruise, and that's on June 27th. It's going to be an evening cruise, and the Shadows are going to play. And for those of us that are 39 like I am, you know, they'll remember the Shadows. In fact, I had the pleasure of helping that band get going when Dexter Yates and some of the players were still in high school and used to play at our teenage dances. Of course, the one thing for the Centennial that should be big is our 4th of July activities. And as Centennial year, we're going to have a Centennial 4th of July parade. We're going to have a lighted boat parade. We're going to have the big Centennial fireworks display. And the 4th of July committee with the Centennial committee is working on that. The Lions Club has their annual rodeo. This year it's going to be a Centennial rodeo. And I don't know what they're working in to make it bigger and better, but that's what Gil Yates has told me, that it's going to be one of the best ones they've ever had. Of course, we're going to have the Human Rights Centennial celebration here at the City Park, and that was the first one last year, and I'm sure this year it will be a major event. Coeur d'Alene is known for its reception, friendly reception to people, and we want to make sure that everybody in the United States knows that we are a friendly city that welcomes friendly people. Of course, I want to get into one of the major events that we are going to sponsor, and that's going to be an all-city Centennial picnic and barbecue at the fairgrounds. And that will be in July on the 26th. It's going to start at 1 o'clock, and it's going to go until probably 8, 9 o'clock that night. And we anticipate having 2,000 people. We're going to have air shows. We're going to have arts and craft displays. We're going to have an antique car show. We're going to have an old-time costume, not show, but a judging costume. We're going to have a fiddler's contest. We're going to have a beard growing contest like Steve here. We hope he'll enter into it. There's going to be a very minimum admission of $5. We're going to have 3 bands playing. We're going to have a Western band. We're going to have a jazz band. We're going to have different kinds of bands. We're going to have a gun club exhibition. We're going to have family fun. We're going to have an outhouse race. And we hope that we get some response from the college. There's a lot of outhouses around here.
I don't know how to take that step.
But we're going to have a family fun time. We're going to have sack races and a money scramble within the hay and straw. And KVNI is going to live broadcast that day. We're going to have a tug of war that day. And incidentally, we'll get back to the tug of war a little bit later because I'm not sure where the police department sets in this.
I want to save some of those things for the other show. And secondly, if our viewers will get a pen and some paper, we'll give them an address and telephone number because I know a lot of them will want to get that information from you so they can have the entire record. At this time, we will return to Steve Sheen.
Gladys, I know that, and I couldn't help but notice on your jacket there, among the other pens, there's one that you acquired kind of recently, I believe, from the good people up in Cranbrook, British Columbia. They were here not too long ago in a sort of an exchange program to look for ways that the two cities might cooperate more in the future. And Red mentioned the fact that we're looking to draw people from not just Idaho, northern Idaho, and the rest of the state, but all throughout this Pacific Northwest region. Is there any effort to specifically target Cranbrook or other parts of Canada for this attraction?
Yes, there is. Cranbrook is planning on being in our Centennial Parade on May 23rd. And the first part of May, we're going to be meeting with them at the border for a proclamation of joining as sister cities.
Excellent. Returning to that Chamber of Commerce theme, and I can't get too far away from that myself, there are lots of reasons that I can think of that make a Centennial exciting. You know, there's community pride and the sense of history that it restores, but there's got to be some economic benefit from an activity like this. Has any thought been given to that? Is that part of your promotion effort, to tell people what we can realize?
Very much so. And we have many things in the town to offer, and we have our Centennial pins and plates and buttons that we are selling to promote Coeur d'Alene so that they carry a little piece of Coeur d'Alene home with them.
Mm-hmm. So there's the possibility of some carryover benefit. We introduce Coeur d'Alene to other people. Any thought given at all? Are there any estimates of what in dollar terms these activities are going to mean to the community?
It brings in many people, and they either are staying overnight or attending during the day, eating in the restaurants and so forth. And it's hard to judge what really happens, but they're family-type people that are brought in, and they come in early morning and are there as the activities go on through the day.
Good. I'd like to follow up on that, since you are chairing the parade. I'm a little confused, and you can clear that up for me. I understand that there is a Centennial Parade in May, but we always have an annual July the 4th parade, and they're going to emphasize the Centennial also.
That's
correct. Are you
correct.
Involved in just the one May, or both May and July?
I'm very involved in the one in May, and I'm helping with the one on July 4th.
Could you distinguish, well, I know the one July the 4th celebrates the country's independence, but
That's right.
The one in May is going to just be solely emphasizing
It's our Lake City Days weekend parade, and we're changing it to be on Memorial Day weekend, and hope in the future that this is the starting point of it, to make Memorial Day weekend a Lake City Days Centennial celebration, and in the future will become Lake City Days.
Am I also correct to understand that as far as the floats are concerned and the parade, that the theme will evolve out of the Centennial much more so than July the 4th? Is that
That's correct. It's the Proud Past, Exciting Future is the theme for the parade this year. And we have entries for the parade and have a grand prize of $250 for the best entry depicting the Centennial theme.
And I understand that cities or organizations from other places other than Kootenai County or even Idaho can join and be part of that.
That's correct.
And
Anyone can. And we have applications coming in, and they can be picked up at the chamber office or by calling Arlene Howell or myself, and we'll send you an application and come join us.
Just as I was indicating to Red Halpern, you see there's all kind of reasons why people are going to need to write and be involved in this, and we'll get back
That's
to that.
right.
I'd like to move on to our third guest, Willie Hansen, and I believe that, as we indicated at the beginning, that you're also very involved in the Memorial Weekend, and that
Right.
you have a lot of activities. Would you mind running through those? And that sounds like
Sure.
that might be the biggest weekend of all during the Centennial.
Right. First off, we have 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Saturday. We're having the Senior Citizens Pancake Feed on Indiana, and Louise Gillespie is putting that on. And that's also going to be on Sunday from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock. That way, anybody who gets out of church will be able to maybe get something to eat and then go to the other functions. At 11 o'clock, of course, we do have the parade at 11 o'clock on Saturday. And then at 1 o'clock, we were hoping to have a tug-of-war competition down on the city beach between the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department and the city police. But at this time, we haven't received confirmation from the city police. So,
Well, I could interject something there if it's possible, Tony. Coeur d'Alene's Finest hasn't given us a reply. They have hinted through the mayor that they are not going to participate, although the mayor has stated that he would like to see them participate. However, that's up to them. But we do have an offer from the Senior Citizen Center saying that if the police department doesn't take up the challenge to the fire department, the senior citizens feel that they can get a team together to replace the police department.
Are they trying to send a message to the police
I think
department?
we're trying to give them a message. However, we will have a tug of war, and we finalized it just the other day as far as the site is concerned. We were originally planning on having it over on 3rd Street by Tubbs Hill. But now we have come with a better location. We have cleared this with Doug Eastwood, the Parks Director, and it's going to be right at the city beach. So we're going to have the crowd down there for all the other events going on. And we're going to dig right along the water line, we're going to dig a trench or a canal so the water backs in. And then we're going to have each of the opposing parties on one side of the canal. So I think that the loser is going to get a little bit wet. But we will have a tug of war. The fire department is set, and if the police department gives us an answer this week that they're definitely not going to go, then we will look for a substitute team.
Now, we're doing this on April the 14th, so by the time this airs, they might have agreed to do that. If not,
well, this is going to be done. This is going to be done on May. Oh, I see what you're getting at, the show.
The show when it airs.
Right.
But it sounds like that you're kind of like a court of law, that you're setting a deadline for the police, and you're indicating that they only have so long to make a decision.
Well, when I get a parking ticket, the police always give me a deadline saying you got to pay by such and such a time or you're dead.
Well, that seems rather fair that you set a deadline. Willie, can we continue a little bit with the other events?
At 2 o'clock after the tug of war, we have a celebrity tricycle race. Now, KCDA has volunteered to sponsor this, and it's going to be on the slab out in the park, and it's going to be more or less an obstacle course. We're hoping to have about 20 entries in it, and they will be contacting different members of the community to see if they will ride in it. I don't know, it's been a long time since I've ridden on a tricycle, but...
Willie, is it proper at this time if we issue an official challenge to Tony Stewart, inviting him to participate in the tricycle race?
I think so.
We're also going to ask President Bennett, too. So you will be in good company.
Well, I thought you'd want to help make it competitive. If I enter, probably the race will be over before it starts. So make it a second thought.
We'll take a chance.
Steve Sheep.
Someone mentioned when we at the beginning of the show about collectibles, memorabilia that'll be associated with this. I know that's a big interest with a lot of people. We've got pins. What else is going to be produced as part of the centennial effort that people can take back with them and keep?
4th of July parade, they're going to have T-shirts with the logo of the 4th of July on. And it's not the exact centennial one. It's a very colorful shirt. Bob Jenks from Everson showed it to me the other day. Very colorful T-shirt. And they are just now getting their order, so they'll be putting them on the market. And our Commodores have our centennial pin, which, as you can tell, that I am wearing. And
those pins have more than one use, obviously.
that's correct.
All right. And they're available in the form as earrings, as you're wearing them, or as lapel pins?
We have the pins to sell. Our Commodores are wearing the tie tacks and the earrings to promote them, and we have the pins to sell it for $3.
Steve, I think it's a good time, too, to interject that we have, I guess this is the logo for
Yes,
the centennial, and maybe we can get a shot of this. I didn't warn the cameraman, but would you tell them a little bit how this came about and how it was designed?
Well, that was under the Bob Paulus headed a committee to design the logo, and they had an open contest, and they received colorful sketches from many people, and then the committee of about 8 to 10 people sat down and judged all of the logos that were presented, and this is the one that came up. It shows the Coeur d'Alene. There's a picture of a sailboat, and there's a picture of starting from the left there of Fort Sherman, also a sailboat, and then the present would be a picture of Mr. Hagedorn's new resort, and it says a proud past and exciting future, 1887 to 1987.
It's very nice. I believe to the entrance of the city now they've put up some signs with this logo on it. Steve?
The more we talk, the more I realize that this really is a community-wide effort. And while I'm absolutely certain with the quality of the people represented here in the studio today that things are going along well, I can't help but believe that you might need some additional assistance somewhere. What do you need, and how do people get in touch with you and offer to join in the planning and the work that still has to be done?
Well, Shall I answer that, or?
I'd appreciate it if anyone would call the chamber office and they can forward the message to us.
And that phone
on
number?
anything.
664-3194.
That's correct, Steve. That's correct. I have it on the push button on my phone, and I don't have to remember it.
Well, I think that we should all remember that the chamber is more or less the organizing and leading organization within the community that focuses their attention on many things like this. And the chamber office does serve as the headquarters. Although I have my office and Willie has his and Gladys has hers, it's through the bank. We're involved in separate functions of the Centennial, but the chamber is the main office, and if anybody wants any further information, I would suggest that they write the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce or call them, and then they will then in turn funnel out the requests according to which section of the Centennial activities they go to. But the chamber is our spearheading organization.
Okay. We've given them the telephone number, and that area code is 208. But also, is there an address that you can give them that's the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce? But
P.O. Box 850.
Post Office Box 850 in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
83814.
83814. So,
right.
And of course, if someone did not get that, they can always write to our program here at North Idaho College, and we too will share that with you. A couple other things that I would like to get back to that relate to all the activities. I think you've done a fine job talking about many of the highlights, and I think have interested those from outside our city to come. Red, when this came about as an organization, and you have this very active committee, and there are other committees you've indicated there's an overall committee for the Centennial, who organized that? Did that come from the city of Coeur d'Alene government itself?
Well, you know, when John called me at first, I really didn't realize it at that time until the city kind of got in a hassle about serving in more than one committee, which at that time I became aware of the fact that we are directly sponsored by the city of Coeur d'Alene. The city is involved with the Centennial. The city has donated some seed money. I'm not sure. I think it was $5,000 to start the program. So we are a function of the city as well as a function of the Chamber of Commerce. And we have received nothing but wonderful cooperation and support from both Mayor Stone and all the subordinate staff under the mayor, and also Dana, the city administrator.
Steve Sheen.
I'm kind of a newcomer, not just to Coeur d'Alene, but to this whole region, but it seems to me that I've heard that this must be the centennial season. Am I wrong? Aren't there a number of state centennials and some other regional centennials going on at the same time? And if so, are we coordinating with any of those activities?
Well, it seems that this is centennial time around here because Kellogg just got done with their centennial last year. And a week ago I was down at Boise and I met with Mayor Gehring from Nampa, and Nampa had their centennial in 1985, and I got some neat ideas from him which we hope to put into effect as part of ours, some things that they did that they found were successful. So, you know, the state centennial is in 89. So, you know, if the state centennial is in 89, and I think Idaho kind of crunched everything together, I think there's going to be a lot of cities that are going to be celebrating their centennial just have recently or going to in the next 10 years.
We also don't want to forget that this is a very special year. In September, we will celebrate the bicentennial of the United States Constitution.
Right.
And Idaho is doing a fine job. The Idaho Trial Lawyers Association is doing a program in 8 cities throughout Idaho in both April and May concerning that issue.
Tony, I wonder, we spoke a minute ago, if it's all right, we spoke a minute ago about some of the things that we have for sale. And one of the nicest things that's come out of the Centennial right now is a poster that was made by a young lady. And this is on sale at some of the stores in the downtown and other areas. And this more or less depicts the entire background of Coeur d'Alene from when it starts, and accompanying the poster is an answer sheet, more or less.
Steve might hold up that corner there, up this one here. And we'll get a look at this. This shows Coeur d'Alene from its beginning. Some of the people that, like Mr. Fred Murphy is down here in the corner, and Bob Templin, and the old Wilson Pharmacy, Template's old place, and the Wilson Pharmacy building, and the Coeur d'Alene Old City Hall. And the first picture, of course, is a
picture of old Fort Sherman. And this is on sale. I think the price is
$7.95.
$7.95, which is really very inexpensive. You get the answer sheet to come with it, and we've noticed that a lot of people are having them framed as souvenirs, and they are going like hotcakes. I understand that they are already in their third printing.
And are there several locations around Coeur d'Alene that you
Yes,
those?
yeah. Anybody walking down almost in any of the trivia stores in Coeur d'Alene is going to find them on sale there.
One could also purchase those, and as you indicated, have them framed and give them as gifts. That would be nice gifts for others, and particularly those who will not be in the city during the centennial. Steve?
Such a worthwhile activity. I want to give you more than your fair share of commercial announcement time. We began to talk about what you need in terms of help and where people can contact you. Is there anything specifically that you're still concerned about that still needs time, attention, people?
Gladys, I'd say you and Willie should probably...
We're working on our committee. We'd like to encourage any individual, business, organization, anyone to participate in our parade on May 23rd for the centennial kickoff at 11 o'clock. And
especially any bands.
Entry forms are needed for that, and if so, where would they be available?
They're available at the chamber office.
All right.
And they are going to be coming out in the newspaper, in the press.
Right.
And so they can cut it out of the paper and just send it in.
And the same is for the boat parade on Sunday.
Right, and the boat parade is at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
We might also point out to the citizens or viewers who are watching that they might be concerned about accommodations. What does it look like for being able to get accommodations to spend some time in Coeur d'Alene during those most busy times? What is the capacity of the different hotels and motels?
We have many hotels, and I would recommend they get the reservations in as soon as possible.
But they certainly are reservations available. And,
that's correct.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be any shortage of reservations for any of the hotels or motels within the city during the May activity and usually the June activities. Like Gladys said, I think for the July and August activities, you know, I got to mention one other activity that we have here, and this is right in the middle of July, or August rather, when we're going to have a big regional softball tournament, which is going to be a centennial tournament.
We're going to cut it off on that note, but we can pick that up next week, Red, when you're back with us.
Okay.
We're out of time, I'm sorry, but thank all three of you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been discussing the centennial celebration that's taking place and will be taking place in Coeur d'Alene over the next few months, and we want to inform you we'll be back next week to continue to discuss this and particularly talk about the history and the past of Coeur d'Alene. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time. Welcome to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
This week we wish to do part 2 of our 2-week series celebrating the centennial of the city of Coeur d'Alene. As you found out last week if you were watching our program, we indicated that through the weeks that just lie ahead, we are celebrating that 100 years of our city. Our state will celebrate that same birthday in 2 years from now. Last week we were able to talk about a number of the events that are taking place, and we're talking about your coming and being with us during those celebrations. I'm happy to welcome back to the program 2 guests from last week and a new one, additional one this week. First of all, I welcome back Red Halpern, who is serving as the chairman of the Special Events Committee for the Centennial. And back with him is Gladys Walker, who last week discussed with us some of the parade events, and she represents the Chamber of Commerce Commodores. And I'm happy to welcome back a friend from many years back, since I've been in Coeur d'Alene, Ace Walden, who is a retired banker, and he's one of our resident historians, and he will discuss the past history of Coeur d'Alene. And as always, I'm happy to have as a panelist, Director of Informational Services at North Idaho College, Steve Schink, and he shall start the questioning at this time.
Red Halpern, I learned a lot from last week's show, and the thing that impressed me most is the scope of the activities that you have planned for the centennial celebration. For the benefit of those people who weren't with us last week, I wonder if you could recap those activities and also mention a few that I think maybe we didn't have time to cover in our last show.
Well, the activities basically start, Steve, with about the first part of May. And one of the first big events that we're going to have, I'll go over the big events that we'd like to invite people to come down to stay for an extended period of time. But one of the first big events is that Up With People show, which is being sponsored by the Rotary Club, and that's the 12th and 13th of May. Then, of course, we're having our Lake City Days centennial activities, pardon me, which is a parade and special feeds and dances and games, etc., etc. It's going to be a 2-day activity. Pardon me, we're having band music at the city park. Most of these activities will be at the city park. 4th of July is going to be centennial activities. And one of the things that's going to really be a big one is we're going to have a barbecue, a picnic, a reunion for all of the high school graduating classes and anyone else that would like to come on Sunday the 26th of July. I don't think we touched on something that's going to be a big event, and we're going to have a centennial reunion dance. That's going to be in August, and again that's going to be by the fabulous Shadows. And as you remember, that drew anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people at their last event. So the Shadows have indicated that they're going to be back. We're going to have a centennial dance, and that should bring in thousands of people. I don't think we mentioned at the last show that these activities will continue into the fall and winter program. We will conclude with a big Christmas dance. We're also going to have Halloween activities, and we're also going to have an Oktoberfest. So those will all be part of the centennial activities that we're making plans for now, but we'll come out with a second half program after Labor Day weekend.
Gladys, in continuing that effort to bring people up to date who may not have been with us for our last show, could you update us again on some of the parade activities, that being one of the central features of the celebration?
The Memorial Day weekend, we're going to have 2 parades, one on Saturday, May 23rd, which is going to be the Centennial Street Parade, starting at 11 o'clock, and on Sunday, May the 24th, will be the Boat Parade, sponsored by the Marine Division of the Sheriff's Department, at 1 o'clock.
You're looking for participants in both those activities?
That's correct.
And if I might just remind the audience briefly that anyone who wants to become involved, either in terms of the parade or in terms of helping with this effort, should probably direct their initial contact to the Chamber of Commerce at phone number area code 208-664-3194, or write the Chamber of Commerce, P.O. Box 850, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, zip code is 83814.
They've also put that on the screen so that the people can pick that up.
Oh, very nice.
I would like to move into a little history. I've been looking forward to doing that. That's why we are having all these events, to celebrate what has gone on for 100 years. And Ace, I know that you are really a lover of history and you've done a lot of things. Would you take us through some of the past of Coeur d'Alene and some of the landmarks of our city and some of the events that have taken place and something about our background of our people?
Tony, you've probably discovered that if I want to remember something, I write it down. You'll have to give this as one of the processes of old age.
Ace, were you here right from the start?
No, I've not been here 100 years.
Oh, I wonder.
No, I walked in here on June 12, 1911 from a box cart was parked out here by the Kootenai Medical Center.
Oh.
Maybe they shouldn't have gotten the box car to stop. Coeur d'Alene was a unique and interesting place to spend a childhood. In addition to people, we grew up with things. And there have been many changes since I started a newsboy career by selling papers on the downtown streets here in 1913. That's a few years back. We now have the Coeur d'Alene Resort, the boardwalk, the clock tower, Independence Point, and a well-manicured beach, North Idaho College, and many other attractions. The things I remember are gone, except for one, Tubbs Hill. I belong to a group of urchins that's skinny dipped in the summertime in the water adjacent to the west side of Tubbs Hill. And we put our clothes back on while we were still wet and raced past 3-story cave to the top of the hill, where we rested and looked around, and our world suddenly became much larger and more interesting. There was much to be seen from the top of Tubbs Hill.
Could we interject something here in regards to something Ace said?
Yes.
Ace, I just want you to know that a number of years ago, the city, through efforts with the federal government, has now full claim to Tubbs Hill, and Tubbs Hill will be there forever, as it is. It is in a natural site. The city purchased all of the waterfront, and for future generations, Tubbs Hill will be there forever.
Well, I'm delighted about that. Of course, and I'm particularly interested in the walkway around Tubbs Hill. There are many of the items that were there in years gone by that no longer exist, but the trail didn't always go around Tubbs Hill, but it does now, and I think it's quite interesting and well worthwhile to
I walked
take
around it
that
just
walk.
2 weeks ago.
It was about 2 weeks ago when I did.
Yeah.
The Idaho Hotel was where First Security Bank is now. And it was an attractive Spanish-type, imposing structure. And it was a pleasant experience just to look at it from the waterfront. And it was our town's meeting place in those years because it was close to the depots, and it was also our #1 hostelry. And many people were always gathered and moving around during daylight hours. It was much fun to just mingle and see what was happening in the rest of the world.
Do you remember, Ace, when they used to dump logs down in front of where, well, I guess you could say where Mr. Hagedorn's offices are right now, and Great Northern had their building out there?
Yes, but it was a little bit west of there. It was part of the city parking lot and part of McEwen Field that Coeur d'Alene Lumber Company had their mill, and they had their log boom down there, and we used to run those logs until somebody would get unhappy with us and boot us off. But we were there quite often.
Ace, my father-in-law is 83 years old, and isn't Templins, what used to be Templins, on part of a landfill?
Yes, the landfill was actually east of it. It was put in there by a drag line when they bought the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad here. And that's why you have some lots down there that were mud flats prior to the bringing in of that particular railroad. And that's why some of those lots are not completely covered by water, but there's only about 1.5 feet at the end of them on the north side that that aren't covered by water.
Excuse me, Ace, concerning the Idaho Hotel, you talked about was the meeting place of all the citizens, and of course people were coming from different places staying there. How many people could take care of at the hotel?
Oh, not too many. There were 3 floors. They had a basement where they had a cigar store and a card room and things of that kind, and then they had the main floor where you registered, and then they had a second floor, and I imagine that probably they had 30 rooms, maybe 40.
Okay. You also have indicated in some notes that I have here, along with the history of the hotel, that there was, and I know Red's very familiar with this and has heard a lot about it in the past too, because he studied history, and we have some nice museums too that we should talk about that are in our city that people can visit while they're here for the centennial. We're very proud of those museums, and one on campus and then one just uptown. But there was a Coeur d'Alene brewery.
Yes.
Here where the college is at the Fort Grounds. Would you tell us about that?
Well, it was in the Fort Grounds. It was called Riverside Avenue in those days, but it's now River Avenue. And it was the tallest building in Idaho north of Lewiston. And it was built of rock and stone and cement and some wood and much metal and a lot of glass.
How many stories, Ace?
Well, it didn't have stories to it, but it just pointed up and finally wound up in a kind of spire. It got, as it reached upward, it got sharper and smaller. And it was fun to look at that building from over by the Blackwell boarding house on the far side of the Spokane River, to look back towards it, because it was so huge and because it looked like a castle, in my opinion, and it helped dreaming about castles and sometime maybe being able to see one.
How was the beer?
My father had a case of beer that he bought there just before the law shut it down. And we moved that around in Coeur d'Alene from one place to another. And I lost my father in 1933, and we still had that beer at the time of his death, or at least the bottles that it came in. And we had it tucked away in a barn in back of the house where we lived. And I don't know what happened to it, but after his death, I tried to find it, and I never have.
If I may, I've got to direct your attention back to something you said earlier, too. You made the comment, and maybe you were just generalizing, that of all the things you remember as a boy in 1911 when you first came here, the only thing that remains is Tubbs Hill. Is that an actual fact? There are no building. What's the oldest building still standing in Coeur d'Alene?
Oh, there's a lot of them that have been modernized. We moved our bank moved into a place, the old Wiggett building on the northwest corner of 4th and Sherman. And that was built before the turn of the century.
When was City Hall built, Ace? Do you know?
1906, it said on the front of it.
That's what I thought. I was going to say that was there before you came.
Yes.
So that's still around in somewhat. It's
the old City Hall, but it's no longer a City Hall.
No.
Yeah, right.
The exterior's been preserved, but that's all.
Well, it's a lot different than it was. The fire station used to be in there, and I remember selling papers and getting acquainted with some of the firemen and going up to the top floor, which was the 3rd floor, and coming down on the brass pole that they had that they slid down from their living quarters onto the truck. And they didn't like to have us do that too much because they had to clean it up, the fingerprints off it.
What, in your opinion, Ace, was the and it's one of the sadnesses, I guess, of progress, the beauty that we lose trying to move forward, and maybe too late we recognize that what we've given up. But architecturally, what do you think is the biggest loss from those days?
Well, I think the City Hall. It hasn't been totally lost, but at the time it was, when I came here, or when I first remembered looking at it, it was really something. And of course, so was the Idaho Hotel. But you see, what happened was that the state of Idaho voted local option for alcoholic beverages. And Kootenai County voted to go dry, not to have them manufactured here or sold here. And that made a big change in the city of Coeur d'Alene at that time. It was about 1913 when the things started to indicate that we were dry. Of course, that didn't prevent people from going somewhere else and getting it and bringing it in. But that marked the demise of the Idaho Hotel as we know it. I used to bellhop there in years gone by.
When was the Desert Hotel built?
The Desert Hotel was not built. It was bought. They bought the Idaho Hotel. Victor Desert of Spokane bought it.
I see.
And he had grandiose plans for it in the late 1920s. And none of them came to fruition because he had 2 hotels in Spokane then. And
Ace, in relation to what you're saying too, you've indicated that we have not been very active in preserving landmarks in our area, but there is on the campus of North Idaho College 2 buildings that go back to when it was a federal fort. That's the Powder Magazine, and you were very helpful, and your wife was very involved with the preservation of that particular Powder Magazine.
And the chapel.
Building. And the chapel, which is on campus. And those are 2 sites that people should see when they come here. Colonel McFarland was very instrumental in helping with that. And you've indicated, too, from some notes that I have here, and I bring it to that point that those buildings are located on the campus of North Idaho College, but it used to be called Coeur d'Alene College, and you have a name here calling it the Swedish College. Would you tell us a little history of the college and how it came to be known as?
Well, that college building remains. It's part of the Heritage Place Coeur d'Alene Homes complex now. It was originally called the Coeur d'Alene College, and they nicknamed it the Swedish College.
And it was a private college at that time.
I don't know how private. My wife's grandmother was graduated from there, but I don't know what the requirements were for entrance. But it sat alone on that bluff over there, looking down on the Spokane River, or looking at it, and there were no other buildings around it. And if you went on the other side of the, across the old Blackwell Bridge and Blackwell Island and over to the Blackwell boarding house, which is on the other side of the river, and looked back at it, it looked like a huge estate of one kind or another, because it was an only building in much territory. And in the wintertime, it was just gorgeous to look at it, because there was so much snow and on the ground and on the green trees that surrounded it. But it still remains, yes, but it is no longer a college, and it's a retirement home now.
Well, didn't the college at one time function out of the top floor of Coeur d'Alene City Hall? Seems like I read something when Orrin Lee was president.
1933.
Yeah. Well, that's not back 100 years, you know, but...
But that's when it was started.
Yeah, it started in City Hall.
Yeah, Emmy Breakmeyer started. I think at the end of the first year they had 17 students. We were part of the campus there. They wouldn't give the students keys to the restrooms, and we had community restrooms in the American Trust Company, and so we were only a block away.
You know, I remember vacationing here in Coeur d'Alene, Tony, before I moved here in 1954. I think it was in 1949 or 50, I came over to Coeur d'Alene for a week's vacation, and we stayed just on the other side of the city park, almost on college property now, in a resort. I think it was called Finch's. Finch's had a boarding house there. Yes, it was. They had a boarding house, and right in front of their boarding house there used to be a speedboat dock. And Finney's had a speedboat that, in fact, they still had that when I became Parks and Recreation Director here in 1954.
Was that the year we're talking about?
Well, I don't know, but I remember that there used to be a resort on the lake before Templins and Hagedons.
Ace, I've got to ask you about the restroom keys. That'll bother me forever. What is it about college students from 1933 that has changed so dramatically that they wouldn't even allow them to use restrooms in those days? I always thought the kids were supposed to behave better in the old days.
Well, I don't think it was a question of behavior. The employees at the City Hall and the various departments each had a key to the restrooms. And the students at the college did not.
I see.
That's about the best way I can answer it at the moment.
I can add a
And
little.
we didn't need keys for the restrooms in the bank. We had community restrooms there.
In 1983, we did on this program a celebration of the 50 years of North Idaho College, and it is a very old community college. And on the program were some of the students from the original class, and they indicated that they were on that field, on the top floor, as you've indicated, and they did have to go borrow the key or ask for the key when they wanted to use the restroom. Also, the men's basketball team, I understand that every young man going to college was on the team. It took them all to have a team. And there still were one player short, and so the coach also played. And then finally, of course, they moved down here to what was called the Fort Grounds, and North Idaho College has emerged from that with about 2,500 students. It's an interesting process. Ace, while we have you here, I'm really taking advantage of this history, and I think that Red and everyone else is enjoying these questions about what our 100 years has been like in the city of Coeur d'Alene. I have one final question, then I'll return to Steve. You've been around and been able to see a number of decades and enjoy this beautiful area. And I would like to ask you, Ace, what is the thing that's changed about Coeur d'Alene that has been most positive and exciting to you, and what change has taken place that's been most disappointing to you?
Well, I haven't been disappointed. I think Coeur d'Alene has been very fortunate. We may not have always been too profitable economically, but we've never, outside of 1933, which I remember real well, we haven't had the serious ups and downs economically that other people and other places have had. When we had a real bad time, the whole country was having a bad time. It seems that always something happened that helped us out. There was Farragut, of course, at one time, and there was also tourism, and particularly in the later years. But I haven't been disappointed. I think that if you're looking at geography from Coeur d'Alene, you want to remember that at one time Front Street, which actually fronted the lake, was the main street in Coeur d'Alene, and Sherman Avenue was an alley. And we now have quite a few changes on the waterfront, but the pull for development and the movement in Coeur d'Alene is north, rather than, because we're blocked off by the lake at one end. So geographically speaking, the population area is moving north rather than remaining where it was. We always thought that 4th and Sherman was going to be the busiest street corner in the city of Coeur d'Alene, and obviously it is not now.
Steve Sheen.
Ace, as a banker for many, many years in Coeur d'Alene, you were closely tied to the economic development of the area. How's that changed when you look out your window today? I know the basic industries have been around for a while, but I can't help believing that there have been shifts that are fairly dramatic over that period of time.
Well, that's true, I suppose, but everything's a matter of price when you start looking at it, because we all determine whether we can get something and sell it for a better price than it costs us. Depends on a great many factors, and where lumber used to be available even in lots in downtown Coeur d'Alene. I mean, the logs were. Now it isn't unusual for people to bring the logs in from 50 miles out, and so there are changes. But I applaud them. I think that half the road is always somebody else's, and competition is great, and life here is just the way I'd like to have it be, and I just hope I could be around for another 5 years and see what happens.
I hope so,
well,
too.
Steve, I think there's something to that, and I think I agree with Ace that I'd like to interject at this time is that, I can remember 30 years ago and 35 years ago where the waterfront was nothing but a filthy mess, and there's no other way to describe it. I remember when they were dumping logs down there, and we used to clean at least a 2 or 3 ton truckload of bark off the city beach every morning to make it presentable for swimmers. Pointner had his machine shop down there. Do you
Bob
remember?
Yount had his
Yeah,
boat works.
and Yount had his boat works down there. And that is a mess. Now Coeur d'Alene has what I consider one of the most beautiful waterfront areas that you can find in any city. From the city beach all the way around to Tubbs Hill, it's a gorgeous view. And people can walk around it, which they couldn't 30 years ago. You couldn't climb through the boat works, or you couldn't go through the machine shop. It was blocked off, and they used to have Playland Pier down there. And of course, that's quite a bit of history of Coeur d'Alene. But right now, with the development that we have down there, where people can walk from almost from the college all the way around to Tubbs Hill, all the way around to 11th Street, over by the 11th Street Marina down there, you can walk along the lake. How many cities can say that you have a walkway along the lake, and it's a natural walkway? So I think that our city has improved their downtown area, especially the area that's receptive to the visiting public. Come to Coeur d'Alene.
Red, in 1913, we had 2 open sewers down there where the Coeur d'Alene Resort is, and alongside of those 2 frame buildings that were there. And because if people had something they didn't want for one reason or another, they chose a propitious time and took it down there and threw it into the water. And we had wharf rats down there, about half the size of a house cat with dirty fur and beady eyes and sharp teeth.
Red, I'd be a pretty poor public relations director for North Idaho College if I didn't point out that you can indeed walk all the way around the college property, thanks to the efforts of the college and some visionary local people and a variety of local and state and federal governments. That entire 3,300 feet of beach is open to public use, and it's a tremendous asset to the to the community.
We're just about out of time. We have about 2 minutes left. I want to get back to Gladys for a moment, and now that we've done, I think, a really interesting description of the past of Coeur d'Alene, we're going to now move toward what's happening right now, what's going to happen in the next few months. And I would like for you again to tell our viewers that weren't with us last week, what is the theme that we're emphasizing during this celebration?
Our centennial theme is Proud Past, Exciting Future. And that's the parade theme, and the boat parade on Sunday is a salute to the lake. And the Centennial Committee is very active in promoting our pins and buttons and plates and a silver coin and our Centennial poster that's available.
You also have information, though, that for those who really like to read about some of the history of Coeur d'Alene, that'll be available during the celebration.
That's correct.
I wish we could continue this, but the clock has caught up with us again. I want to thank all three of you, and Red, I want to thank you for coordinating and getting all of our guests here, and good luck to all of you and your committee work. And I know you put a lot of hours in. I know Steve joins me in commending you for doing all this work, because it takes a lot of work for others to have the opportunity to enjoy it. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the last 2 weeks when we've been talking about the centennial of Coeur d'Alene and what has gone on in the past and what is going on now. And again, I want to invite you to be with us during these events. And again, I would remind you, you can contact the Coeur d'Alene Chamber if you wish more information for particular events. I want to invite you to be with us again next week at the same time when we'll discuss an important subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.